My mother's voice cracked through the phone like frost against glass. Emily, you don't need to come home for Christmas this year. Ryan invited some of his partners, and Madison's planning a live stream. You understand it needs to look perfect. I froze beside the classroom window, the laughter of first graders still echoing in the hallway as the last bell rang. Outside, snow fell in lazy spirals, blurring the city lights into something almost kind. So I'm not invited, I said quietly. Don't be dramatic, she sighed. It's just that your lifestyle doesn't really fit the image. Madison thinks, well, you know how people talk, because I teach children, because you're not, like Ryan. He's worked hard for the family name. I waited for the sound I always counted on my father's voice in the background, soft but grounding. Carol, he said faintly. Maybe she... Thomas, please, she snapped. Then silence. My father's silence, the kind that always meant surrender. Merry Christmas, Mom, I said, ending the call before my throat could break. The quiet in my apartment was heavy enough to drown in. The Christmas tree I'd bought from a gas station lot flickered with weak light, its tinsel drooping. On the piano by the window sat a yellowed photo of my grandmother Ruth Dawson, the woman who'd raised me when my parents were too busy keeping up appearances. Her hands were folded, her eyes steady, the kind of gaze that made truth feel inescapable. People will show you who they are when they think you have nothing, she used to say. That's when you'll see their worth. I whispered to the photo. You were right again. 3 years had passed since her funeral, and I still felt her presence in the hum of the radiator, in the faint scent of her lavender lotion I'd kept sealed in a drawer. I remembered the last Christmas I'd spent with her sitting by her hospital bed, stringing paper stars while she talked about the value of quiet strength. They'll never see you coming, Emily, she'd told me, her voice calm but fierce. That's the beauty of being underestimated. I hadn't understood then what she meant. I did now. That night, I replayed Mom's words over and over until they no longer hurt, just rang hollow. Ryan, my older brother, had always been the golden child, the business prodigy, the family's shining legacy. His wife Madison turned their lives into a brand success and elegance powered by ambition. My name never fit the caption. I'd been the footnote, the teacher sister with the wrong clothes, the wrong job, the wrong everything. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that my grandmother's legacy didn't die with her. It was sitting locked in a safe behind my piano, sealed with documents that could turn the Dawson family narrative upside down. Ruth had left me something more powerful than money, the truth about who deserved her fortune and why. I looked at the phone again. One missed call from Dad. I didn't answer. His silence during that conversation was louder than any apology he could give. I stood, walked to the safe, and traced the edge of the steel door. The envelope inside bore my grandmother's handwriting. When kindness fades, let justice sing. Snow tapped against the glass like a metronome, steady, relentless. I sat at the piano, pressed one key, and whispered, "Let's see if they still like the sound of Christmas when the music changes." In our family, power wasn't declared, it was inherited. My brother Ryan learned that early. When he was 10, he got the master bedroom because boys need their space. I got the attic with slanted ceilings and a window that leaked every winter. Mom, Carol Dawson, made it sound reasonable, like some natural law of birth order and gender. Dad Thomas just nodded from behind his newspaper. That was our pattern, her voice, sharp, his quiet. Ryan became the family's golden son, the one who'd carry the Dawson name. When he launched his agritech company, Mom sent Christmas cards with his photo printed on them, Ryan and Madison in matching sweaters under the caption, "Building the Future." She never once mentioned that her daughter taught kids who couldn't afford lunch. "You could have done more with your degree," she'd say. "You're wasting yourself in that classroom." I used to defend my work, explain how my students' progress meant something real, but she always countered with one line, "Love doesn't pay mortgages, Emily." She didn't understand that I wasn't trying to pay one, I was trying to rebuild one. Grandma Ruth's old house, the last place that felt like home. Ruth had always been my secret refuge. When Ryan came home bragging about investment rounds and new cars, she'd pour us tea and whisper, "He's loud because he's scared. The truly strong don't need to prove it." She'd lost her husband at 30 and built everything alone, land, business, reputation. The town called her tough. I knew she was just tired of being underestimated. Mom never saw that. She called Ruth old-fashioned and kept her distance after inheriting the family farmhouse deed until Ruth quietly bought it back under her trust, a fact none of them knew. I remember the Thanksgiving 2 years before Ruth died. Madison had just joined the family, glittering with fake charm and a diamond the size of a grape. She walked through Grandma's modest kitchen and said, "It smells like poverty in here." Mom laughed softly as if it were a harmless joke. Ryan didn't even look up from his phone. Dad muttered, "That's enough," but didn't insist. I remember the moment Ruth's eyes met mine, steady measuring like she was taking note of every silence in that room. Later that night, she told me, "You see them clearly. That's your strength and your burden." And she was right. I'd spent years seeing too much Mom's favoritism, Ryan's arrogance, Dad's quiet surrender. Thomas loved us both, but his love was passive, the kind that watched injustice and prayed it would resolve itself. "Don't fight your mother," he'd say when she dismissed me. "She just wants what's best." But best always meant Ryan. When he got into debt during his second startup, Mom dipped into her retirement savings without a second thought. When I needed a new laptop for school records, she said, "Use the old one. Teachers don't need fancy things." Even now at 30, I could still hear her voice defining worth in dollars and status. I wasn't jealous of Ryan's success. I was exhausted by the hypocrisy of calling it family pride. The truth was simple. My mother loved her son publicly and her daughter privately, the kind of love that came with conditions. And my father, well, he confused peace with silence. Grandma Ruth once told me that silence could be as cruel as words if it protected the wrong people. That memory would come back to me years later, standing in a ballroom full of cameras, watching my family crumble under the weight of their own voices. But back then, I just stood by my window watching snow settle on the cracked pavement below, thinking how even cold can feel familiar when you grow up in it. The last winter I spent with Grandma Ruth didn't feel like an ending. She sat by her window in that same brown cardigan she'd worn for 20 years, the one that smelled faintly of cedar and garden soil. Cancer had taken her appetite, but not her composure. "Sit. Emily," she said, her voice still sharp as wind on dry fields. "We have work to do." Papers were spread across her oak table ledgers, property titles, foundation documents, all under the name Ruth Dawson Agricultural Trust. "You know what this is?" she asked, her eyes glinting with mischief. I shook my head. "Your retirement plan." She laughed softly. "My rebellion." She handed me a folder embossed with gold initials, RD. "They all think I spent my life living off your grandfather's savings." I let them. The truth is, I turned that insurance check into something worth $12 million, quietly, steadily, while your mother was teaching your brother that money equals power. I remember the hum of the old heater, the smell of lemon tea, and my pulse hammering in my ears. $12 million, I whispered, and nobody knows. "Nobody except my lawyer and you," she said, "because I trust you to understand something they never will." She placed her hand on mine. "Wealth tests character, not the other way around, so I've built my will to do just that." She explained the conditions anyone who disrespected honest work, discriminated by gender, or excluded family over status would lose everything. "Let them prove themselves," she said. "You don't have to lift a finger. Truth does the heavy work." I stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "Grandma, they're going to think I manipulated you." "Of course they will," she said. "That's what people say when decency outsmarts them." She sipped her tea, her lips trembling only slightly. "You'll need patience, Emily. Don't rush justice. Let them show the world who they are first." That night, as I tucked her into bed, she whispered something that settled into me like scripture. When people think you have nothing to offer, that's when they reveal how much they've already lost. A week later, Ryan showed up at the hospital for 10 minutes wearing his company jacket and glancing at his phone every 30 seconds. "You look good, Grandma," he said mechanically. "Hang in there." Ruth smiled politely. When he left, she muttered, "That boy has never worked a day that didn't involve applause." The next morning, Dad visited. He brought a bag of oranges and a bottle of aspirin. "You shouldn't be talking about money with Emily," he said quietly, glancing toward me. It'll just set her hopes high. She's not built for that kind of responsibility. Ruth's eyes sharpened. And what kind is that, Thomas? The kind you were too scared to take yourself. He stiffened, flushed. I just mean she's a teacher. She doesn't think like businessmen. That's exactly why she's ready, Ruth said. Because she knows what enough feels like. When Dad left, she sighed and leaned back, her breath thin. Your father's a good man, Emily. But good isn't the same as brave. I stayed by her side until the end. The night she died, I found a sealed envelope in her drawer. The handwriting on it trembled but strong. To my granddaughter, when kindness fails, let justice sing. Beneath it was a key to her safe deposit box and a single gold locket with her initials. Inside was a photo her holding me as a baby, both of us laughing. I realized then that everything she built for that version of us. The version still untouched by judgment, by hierarchy, by the weight of being born female in the wrong family. Grandma Ruth didn't just leave me money. She left me the map to truth and the courage to walk it alone. It was December 5th when the past came knocking again, wearing my mother's voice. Emily, she began the way people do when they're about to insult you politely. We've made some changes for Christmas. I was sitting at my classroom desk, grading papers, shaped like snowflakes, glitter still clinging to my sleeves. Changes, I asked. You won't be coming home this year, she said briskly. Madison's filming a holiday special for her channel. She thinks it might look confusing if the family image isn't consistent. Consistent, I repeated, tasting the word, like ash. Ryan agrees, she added. You understand how important this is for his brand. He's representing the Dawson name, and Madison's sponsors, well, they expect a certain level of presentation. I stared at the stack of Christmas cards my students had made for me, crayon drawings of trees, hearts, and stick figures holding hands. One read, To Miss Dawson, the best teacher ever. I wanted to hold it up to the phone and say, this is what presentation looks like, but I didn't. Instead, I said, So this is Ryan's decision. It's what's best for everyone, she replied. You know how people talk. We don't want him embarrassed. In the background, I heard laughter. Madison's bright, artificial laugh. Embarrassed by what, Mom? Oh, Emily, she sighed. You know what I mean. You work so hard, but you've chosen a humble life. You wouldn't fit in at the table this year. The guests are influential. I almost smiled. The table, that word, had always been her battlefield. Who sat where, who deserved the best china, who served and who was served. I see, I said, and Dad agrees. A pause. Then, in a smaller voice, Thomas thinks we should avoid conflict. That silence between us stretched across decades. Every injustice I'd endured in that house was built on that same quiet permission. Understood, I said. Enjoy your perfect Christmas. I hung up. My hands didn't shake. They'd learned that trick long ago. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. Ryan Dawson. Don't take it personally. Madison's team is paying for everything. You'd throw off the vibe. No offense. I stared at the text until the words blurred. Then another followed. See you next year, maybe. I typed one line and deleted it. No response was the only dignity left to claim. That night, I opened the safe behind my piano. Inside, under a folder of foundation papers, lay Grandma Ruth's envelope and the legal seal of Ben Carter's firm. The sticky note in her handwriting still made my throat tighten. When they show you who they are, believe them. I sat for a long time, the hum of the radiator filling the silence. Around midnight, my phone rang again, Dad this time. Em, he said quietly. Your mother means well. She just wants Ryan to succeed. At my expense, I asked. It's just one dinner. Why start a fight because Dad pretending not to notice has cost this family enough? He didn't answer, only the faint sound of his breathing. You can't fix things by keeping the peace, I said softly. Sometimes silence is betrayal dressed as kindness. His voice cracked. You sound like your grandmother. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. We hung up without goodbye. Outside, snow drifted over the street lamps, and for the first time, I didn't feel cold. I felt ready. Tomorrow, I'd call Ben Carter. Justice, after all, was about timing, and Christmas had always been about revelation. The morning after that call, I dialed Ben Carter's office. His secretary recognized my name immediately. "Miss Dawson, Mr. Carter's been expecting this." Expecting? The word lingered like a prophecy. When he appeared on the video screen, his suit looked crisp, but his eyes, soft and deliberate, carried the same kindness Grandma Ruth once had. "I take it they've shown their colors," he said. I nodded. "She told me not to come home, said my job would embarrass them." Ben's sigh was long measured. "Mrs. Dawson predicted this, Emily. She left explicit instructions. Clause 4.2. Any act of exclusion or discrimination based on profession, gender, or perceived social standing results in automatic forfeiture." He paused. "Your brother and mother are about to make that clause public record." I leaned forward. "Then let's not stop them. What do you have in mind?" "A gala. The Ruth Dawson Memorial Fundraiser. December 27th. We'll invite every investor, journalist, and donor in the region. They want to prove their worth in front of others. Let them do it under the brightest light." Ben raised an eyebrow. "You plan to confront them?" "No," I said, voice steady. "I plan to let the truth do it for me." He nodded slowly, admiration breaking through his professional calm. "Ruth always said justice doesn't need anger, it needs evidence. I'll make arrangements." We spent the next hour outlining logistics, invitations, venue, the order of speeches, the reveal. I asked him to cue Ruth's video message at the right moment, the one she recorded 6 months before she died. She wanted that message reserved for when the family needed reminding, he said. "I think this qualifies." After the call, I walked to the school gym where we were hosting the annual toy drive. Piles of donated stuffed animals filled the floor. My students' parents waved, some shy, some grateful. A single mother named Angela hugged me and whispered, "You don't know what this means to us," but I did. Grandma used to say generosity wasn't about giving, it was about seeing. That afternoon, while others shopped or baked cookies, I wrote out every guest invitation by hand. The Ruth Dawson Foundation invites you to an evening of remembrance and renewal. I addressed one envelope to Ryan and Madison Dawson, another to Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Dawson. When I sealed them, I imagined the sound as something ceremonial, like closing the door on years of condescension. Later that evening, Ben called again. "Emily, one more thing. Do you want your name listed publicly as chairwoman?" I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The old me, the peacekeeper, the overlooked daughter, wanted anonymity. But then I pictured Ruth's face the day she signed her will. "You don't have to hide to be humble," she told me. "You just have to stand firm." "Yes," I said finally. "Put my name on it." "Understood. And Miss Dawson, your grandmother would be proud." After we hung up, I sat in silence, surrounded by the glow of my small Christmas tree. Outside, the city sparkled in holiday lights, each window framing families that looked perfect from the street. I wasn't jealous anymore. I was resolved. By the end of the week, the invitations were sent, the press quietly notified. I even mailed one to Mom's church address. On the back, I wrote a single line: "Truth doesn't wait for permission to arrive." Then I turned off the lights, locked the safe, and for the first time since Grandma's death, slept soundly. Somewhere in the stillness between snowflakes and streetlights, I could almost hear her voice, soft, certain, prophetic. "Let justice sing, Emily, and make sure they listen." Christmas Eve arrived in silence. The city glowed in gold and red, but my apartment was quiet except for the slow crackle of a cheap candle and the low hum of my old heater. I'd planned it that way. No tree, no gifts, no noise, just peace. On my laptop, Madison's live stream flickered to life. The Dawson Christmas Gala, what she called a celebration of success and family legacy. I clicked play. There they were. Mom, radiant in emerald satin. Ryan, in his custom tux, Madison draped in glittering sequins that shimmered like armor. The camera swept across the dining room, our family home transformed beyond recognition. White roses, gold-trimmed plates, and a 12-foot tree towering over the table. My chair, the one I'd sat in since childhood, was gone. In its place stood a crystal vase filled with red berries. To family, Madison cheered. To legacy, Mom corrected. Ryan raised his glass. And to the future, the Dawson name shining brighter than ever. Their laughter rang hollow. I stared at the screen, half disgusted, half fascinated. I'd spent my life invisible in that room, and now I watched them erase me entirely. But erasure, I'd learned, is also confession. I took screenshots: Mom's toast, Ryan's smug grin, Madison's caption, #real family, only #legacy strong #blessed. My stomach twisted, but not from pain. Clarity burns cleaner than rage. I opened my email and drafted the final message to Ben Carter. Confirm press attendance. Cue video under section 4.2. Let the truth speak on December 27th. I hit send, then leaned back in my chair. Outside, snow fell hard, smothering the street in quiet. A knock startled me. I opened the door to find my neighbor, Mrs. Lee, holding a container of dumplings. "You shouldn't be alone on Christmas," she said kindly. "Family's family, even when it's not blood." I smiled. "You have no idea how right you are." Later that night, I scrolled through the comments on Madison's post. "What a perfect family. Love how genuine you guys are." Goals, and buried among them one voice. Angela, one of my students' mothers, had written, "Strange. My daughter says Miss Dawson spends every Christmas helping at the shelter. Some legacies are quieter than others." The comment had only 2 likes, but it was enough. Before bed, I opened the small wooden box on my desk, the one with Grandma's note. "When kindness fades, let justice sing." I traced the ink with my finger. "It's almost time." "Grandma," I whispered. "They've sung their song. Now they'll hear yours." My phone buzzed just then. A message from an unknown number. "Miss Dawson, this is Ben Carter. Invitations confirmed. Media scheduled. You should be prepared, this will be public." I stared out the window at the snow piling on rooftops, covering the city in fragile grace. "Public is fine," I said to no one. "They made their cruelty public first." I poured myself a glass of cheap wine, turned off the lights, and let the reflection of the city flicker against the window pane. Somewhere in the distance, fireworks cracked above the skyline, tiny bursts of celebration I couldn't feel part of. Yet beneath it all, under the hum of heaters and the smell of dumplings and the faint sound of children laughing outside, there was something else. A pulse. Not of anger, not even of triumph. Just inevitability. Justice wasn't coming, it was already here. The knock came just after dawn on December 26th. It wasn't gentle. It was the kind of pounding reserved for police or preachers. I tightened my robe and opened the door to find my mother standing there in her fur coat, my brother behind her in a tailored suit, and my father trailing like a ghost, clutching his hat in both hands. "Emily," Mom began sweeping into the apartment before I could answer. "We need to talk." Ryan followed, exhaling impatience. "What's this about a gala?" he demanded. "Madison says you're inviting the press. Are you trying to embarrass us?" "Embarrass you," I said calmly. "You managed that yourselves." Mom turned her voice sharp. "Watch your tone. Do you realize how this looks? You throwing around your grandmother's name, pretending to have authority." Pretending, I walked to the piano, lifted the envelope Ruth had left, and handed it to her. The seal of Whitman and Carter gleamed under the morning light. "Read it." She hesitated, then passed it to Ryan. He scanned the page, his smirk faltering. "This can't be real." "It's very real," I said. Grandma left explicit instructions. Clause 4.2. Anyone who excludes family due to social standing or gender loses all claim to her estate. Estate. Mom repeated, her voice trembling. "You mean her house?" "No," I said softly. "I mean everything. The trust, the assets, the investments, the 12 million she never told you about." For the first time, Ryan looked afraid. "You're lying. You'll find out tomorrow." I turned back to the piano, pressing one quiet key. The sound hung in the air like a truth no one wanted to hear. Mom's face flushed red. "You're being vindictive." Ruth wanted the family united. "She wanted it honest," I corrected. "That's not the same thing, Emily," Dad murmured, stepping forward. His voice shook. "Maybe you could ease up. Your brother's under pressure. He's got a business to protect." I met his eyes. "And I had a classroom to protect." "That didn't seem to matter when you let them uninvite me." He swallowed hard, shame flickering across his face. I didn't know what to say. "That's the problem," I said. "You never do." For a moment, silence filled the room, the kind that feels like reckoning. Then Ryan scoffed. You think you can take me down with some technicality? You're a teacher, Emily. You don't understand how power works. You're right, I said evenly. I understand how integrity works, and tomorrow you'll see which one lasts longer. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You'll regret this. Maybe I said, but at least I'll regret something worth doing. Mom clutched her pearls like she was choking. Your grandmother would be horrified. I smiled faintly. She would be proud. Ryan threw the envelope onto the floor. We're leaving. Don't show your face tomorrow or I'll have security escort you out. That won't be necessary, I said. Security already works for me. His laugh was short and incredulous, but I didn't flinch. They turned to go, and for a moment I thought my father would follow without a word. But at the doorway, he stopped and looked back at me. His eyes were tired, rimmed with guilt. Emily, he said softly, you know I never meant to hurt you. I know, I replied. You just never meant to stop it either. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. When they left, I stood alone in the fading chill of their absence, the scent of Mom's perfume hanging in the air like old smoke. I picked up the envelope from the floor, brushed off the dust, and placed it back in the safe. Tomorrow, the truth would no longer belong to me. It would belong to the world. I whispered toward the photo of Grandma Ruth on my piano. They're ready, Grandma. Every lie is lined up like dominoes. All I have to do is touch one. The Ruth Dawson Memorial Gala began under a canopy of white lights and winter breath. December 27th, 7:00 p.m. The ballroom of the old courthouse transformed into something that felt too grand for truth and too fragile for deceit. Reporters lined the walls, the town's elite filled the seats, and in the front row, my family glowed under chandeliers that made their shame look elegant. Ryan stood by the podium rehearsing charm. Madison adjusted her diamond cuff while pretending not to tremble. Mom kept whispering, "Smile. No one can know." And behind them, Dad sat rigid in his gray suit, face-pale eyes, hollow hands clasped so tight his knuckles were white. He hadn't said much since the visit. When I'd sent him the official invitation, he only replied, "I'll come. I need to hear it." I arrived alone, walking through the marble hallway like someone stepping into their own past. Ben Carter met me near the entrance, his expression calm but resolute. "Everything's in place," he said. "The video's ready, the documents are queued. You understand this will make news beyond Kansas." "That's the point." I said, "Grandma didn't build an empire to hide it behind closed doors." He nodded. "Then it's time." The hum of conversations softened when I entered. Heads turned. For once, the whispers weren't dismissive, they were curious, wary, maybe even respectful. I caught Madison's eyes across the room. She looked at me like she was staring at a ghost she couldn't block from her camera. Ryan approached with a glass of champagne he didn't offer me. "I hope you know this spectacle will only humiliate you," he said, smiling like he was posing for the press. "You think this crowd will side with a kindergarten teacher over a CEO? I don't need them to side," I replied. "I just need them to listen." His jaw tightened. "Enjoy your 15 minutes. He turned before I could answer. Mom brushed past me, whispering under her breath, "Don't ruin this, Emily. Just let Ryan speak, smile, and sit down." I didn't reply. Her voice was an echo from my childhood, always instructing, never hearing. The master of ceremonies tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ruth Dawson Memorial Gala, a celebration of legacy philanthropy and family honor." The words tasted bitter, even coming from someone else's mouth. Ryan strode to the stage, charisma rehearsed to the decimal. "My grandmother Ruth taught us all the value of hard work," he began. "Tonight we honor her by expanding the Dawson Agricultural Initiative to support innovation across the Midwest." The crowd applauded politely. Cameras flashed. "And I'm proud," he continued to announce, "that my wife and I will oversee the next phase of her foundation's work." "That's not correct." Ben Carter's voice interrupted, crisp and steady. Ryan froze mid-sentence. The audience shifted. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ben continued, stepping up beside him as counsel to the Ruth Dawson estate, "I must clarify an error." The lights dimmed slightly as the large screen behind the stage flickered to life. Before her passing, Mrs. Dawson recorded a statement regarding the stewardship of her assets. "It's time you all heard it." Ryan stammered, "Wait, this isn't—" But it was too late. The room went silent. The screen brightened, revealing Ruth Dawson sitting upright in her armchair, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her voice, though aged, carried the authority of a gavel. "If you are watching this," she began, "then I am gone and my family stands divided between appearance and integrity." Gasps rippled through the room. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Ruth continued, "My estate is valued at $12 million, including trusts, land, and investments. But money without morality is just paper. Therefore, I have attached one condition: any member of my family who discriminates against another based on profession, gender, or social standing forfeits all claims to this inheritance. Permanently." The video paused as the audience absorbed the words. Ruth's image returned, her eyes narrowing as though she saw through time. True legacy is not built on pride, it's built on compassion. If you forget that you will lose everything I ever worked for. The screen faded to black. No one moved. Then Ben stepped forward again, holding a folder. "We have documentation verifying that these conditions were witnessed and notarized by Judge Reynolds and Dr. Patterson. All legal, all binding." Ryan's face drained of color. "This is manipulation," he spat. She was senile. She passed her final cognitive evaluation with perfect scores. Ben interrupted smoothly, "And she named a successor who met the conditions of integrity she valued most." A low murmur swelled across the ballroom. "Please welcome the new chairwoman of the Ruth Dawson Foundation, Miss Emily Dawson." The applause began hesitantly, uncertain whether to rise or recoil. Mom stood up, her voice breaking through the noise. "No, this isn't right. She's just a teacher." Ben glanced toward the reporters. Yes, a teacher. The one profession Mrs. Dawson admired above all others. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered furiously into their recorders. Madison's phone slipped from her trembling hand. Ryan glared at me. His jaw set veins visible in his temple. "You planned this," he hissed. "No," I said, stepping toward the microphone. "Grandma did. I just kept my promise to let her truth sing." The air felt electric, thick with revelation and disbelief. As the lights brightened again, I looked out at the crowd, friends, strangers, opportunists, and finally at my father. He wasn't smiling, but his eyes, wet and red-rimmed, met mine with something I'd never seen before, pride born of remorse. I took a breath, steady and sure. For years, my family taught me that success was louder than kindness. Tonight, I think we can all agree my grandmother knew better. The room erupted not in chaos, but in something closer to reverence. The truth had finally spoken, and it had perfect pitch. The silence after my speech didn't last long. Ryan lunged toward the microphone, his smile warped into fury. "You think this changes anything? You've manipulated everyone here with your sob story. None of this is real. This is an ambush." Ben Carter didn't even flinch. "No, Mr. Dawson. This is documentation." He lifted a small remote and clicked. The screen behind us flickered to life again, this time displaying screenshots, emails, and social media posts projected 20 feet high. "These," Ben said, "are public records of your family's conduct toward Miss Dawson, each verified and time-stamped." The first slide showed one of Madison's posts from Christmas Eve, "Real family only. Legacy means standards." Gasps rippled through the audience. The next image, a text from Ryan to Madison, read, "Don't invite her. She's a liability. We need the table to look high tier." Then came one from my mother. "Emily's career would embarrass us in front of investors. Best she stays home." The room fell into a hush so complete that the hum of the air conditioning sounded like thunder. Ryan's hands balled into fists. "You went through our private messages." "No," Ben said evenly. "You posted them publicly. And in the digital age, public means permanent." The next slide appeared Ryan's recorded podcast interview from 2 weeks prior, his own voice saying, "Women in business are emotional. My sister's a good example, teaches kindergarten because she can't handle real work." Reporters began to murmur. Phones came out, flashes burst across the ballroom. I watched my mother's face drain of color. her hands trembling as she whispered, "Ryan, what did you do?" He ignored her. "She baited us," he said, pointing at me. "She wanted this." "No," I replied quietly, my voice cutting through the rising noise. "You wanted attention. I just made sure the right people were watching." Ben gestured toward the final slide, a copy of Grandma Ruth's Legal Clause Section 4. 2 highlighted in gold. Any act of deliberate exclusion or public dismissal based on profession, gender, or social standing will result in immediate forfeiture of all claims to the estate. That clause, Ben said, is ironclad. Your grandmother anticipated exactly this behavior. Ryan laughed once, short, sharp, desperate. You think a courtroom would take this seriously? They already have, Ben said, lifting another document. The will has been verified by Judge Reynolds and filed with the probate court. Effective immediately, the estate transfers to Miss Emily Dawson. The collective gasp felt like wind tearing through the hall. My knees wanted to buckle, but I stood taller instead. Behind me on the screen, Grandma Ruth's signature shone in crisp blue ink. For the one who remembers humility, it read. Mom rose shakily to her feet. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You can't do this to your own family." "I'm not doing anything," I said softly. "I'm just not stopping the truth anymore." Dad's voice came then low, rough, trembling. "Carol," he said to her. "She's right. Ruth warned us. We didn't listen." The words hit like a blow. Mom turned to him, stunned, her mascara smudging. "Thomas, not you too." "Especially me," he said. "I've been quiet long enough." Ryan stepped forward again, face flushed. "You're not taking this from me. Grandma built this for men like me. Strong men who can lead. She built it for people who can learn," I said. "You just never tried." He reached for the microphone again, but Ben blocked him. "That's enough, Mr. Dawson." The crowd was no longer on his side. Reporters swarmed closer, questions firing like bullets. "Mr. Dawson, will you contest the will?" "Miss Dawson, how long have you known about the clause? Mrs. Dawson, did you participate in excluding your daughter?" Cameras flashed. The world was watching, and for the first time, my family couldn't hide behind reputation. I looked up at the image of Grandma Ruth frozen on the screen, her steady eyes, her unyielding calm, and I smiled faintly. "You always said truth doesn't raise its voice," I whispered. "It just waits for everyone else to run out of lies." The next morning, the story hit everywhere. Local papers led with it first. Dawson heir disinherited after sexist remarks go viral. Then the national outlets picked it up, the Post. The Tribune even morning television. The photo they used wasn't flattering. Ryan's face frozen, mid-shout veins bulging as I stood behind him, calm as stone. The caption read, "A teacher redefines legacy." Within 24 hours, Ryan's investors withdrew. His company's board announced an emergency meeting. Madison deleted all her accounts, but not before thousands of commenters screenshotted every cruel caption she'd ever written. Mom stopped answering calls. Dad did, though his voice low, stunned, stripped of authority. "It's all over the news," he murmured. "Reporters at the driveway." His voice cracked. "Emily, what have we done?" "You told me not to start a fight," I said gently. But silence started one anyway. That day, I went back to my classroom. My students had seen the news too. One of them, a quiet boy named Caleb, asked Miss Dawson, "Are you famous now?" I smiled faintly. "No, Caleb, just visible." At lunch, Ben called. "It's official. Probate's completed. You are now the legal owner of the Ruth Dawson Foundation and all attached assets." I closed my eyes. The words didn't sound triumphant. They sounded like weight. "What about my family?" I asked. "Your brothers filed no appeal yet. Your mother called my office. She asked whether she could still volunteer for the foundation. I told her to call you directly. And my father. He asked for a job, maintenance part-time, said he wants to fix what he can." I swallowed hard. "Hire him." Ben paused, then smiled softly. "You're your grandmother's granddaughter." That evening, I watched the sunset from my apartment. The sky burned orange and purple, the color of closure. My phone buzzed again this time from an unknown number. A text. "Meet me at the house." It was Dad. The old farmhouse stood at the edge of the property line, lights off roof sagging the air around it brittle with memory. He was waiting by the porch, his hands jammed in his pockets. "She built all this alone," he said, looking up at the house. "And we nearly tore it down without lifting a hammer." I nodded. We were too busy proving who deserved it. He looked at me, then eyes glistening. "Your mother." She thought loving Ryan more made her strong. I thought staying quiet made me decent. We were both wrong. His voice broke. "I'm sorry, Em. I should have defended you years ago." I reached for his arm. "You can still start now. The roof needs fixing." He let out a small laugh that turned into a sob. "You sound like her." "Good," I said. "That means we're not done building." For the first time, he hugged me without hesitation. When he pulled back, his hands were shaking. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Then earn it," I said. He nodded, eyes shining with something close to peace. The next day, news spread that Ryan's company had filed for bankruptcy. Madison had fled to California for privacy. Mom stayed home, curtains drawn. But in the middle of that storm, something strange happened. Donations to the foundation skyrocketed. Letters arrived from teachers across the country, each one thanking Grandma Ruth for her legacy and me for keeping it alive. Ben called again that week, half laughing. "You've become a symbol," he said. "People are calling you the billionaire teacher." "That's not what I want," I said. "Then what do you want?" I looked out the window toward the horizon where the old farmhouse stood small but unbroken. "Redemption," I said. "Not revenge." Justice had spoken. Now it was time to rebuild. The first person to face me after the fallout wasn't Ryan. It was Mom. She arrived at my new office. Grandma's old study on a gray afternoon, heavy with sleet. Her makeup was gone, her coat buttoned wrong, her eyes exhausted. "Emily," she began softly. "I suppose congratulations are in order." Her voice cracked on the last word. I gestured toward a chair. She didn't sit. "You've made your point," she said. "The world saw what you wanted them to see. Your brother humiliated, your mother shamed." I folded my hands. "I didn't want humiliation, Mom. I wanted acknowledgement." "Of what?" "That you were right, that I mattered." She looked away, jaw trembling. "You were never meant to be left out, Emily. Ryan needed help, and I didn't." "You were strong," she said helplessly. "I thought you could handle it." "That's not strength," I said quietly. "That's neglect, disguised as pride." Her lip quivered. "Your father says you've hired him to restore the house." "He asked for the chance." I replied, "He's earned it." She finally sat staring at the photo of Grandma on my desk. "I never understood her," she admitted. "She made me feel small, like everything I did was wrong." "She wasn't judging you," I said. "She was waiting for you to grow." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "I was afraid she'd leave everything to Ryan, so I tried harder to prove I was loyal to the Dawson name. And instead, I said, you lost the one person who ever saw past it." The room went silent, except for the faint tick of Grandma's antique clock. "Is it too late?" Mom asked finally. "For what?" "For me to try again." I thought about Ruth's words. When kindness fails, let justice sing. Justice had already spoken. What remained now was mercy. "That depends on what you mean by try," I said. "If you want the money, then yes, it's too late. But if you want the work, the rebuilding the legacy she intended, then I can find a place for you." She blinked. "Work. The foundation's expanding its mentorship program for rural women entrepreneurs. We could use someone who knows what small-town politics look like." A flicker of something passed through her eyes. Hope, fragile but real. "You'd let me do that? I'm offering you the same thing Grandma offered me," I said. "A chance to prove who you are when no one's watching." For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then she nodded, wiping her cheeks. "I don't deserve your kindness." "No," I said. "But that's what makes it necessary." When she left, the air in the room felt lighter, as though something generational had finally exhaled. That evening, Dad stopped by with a toolbox and a thermos of coffee. We worked side by side repairing the window frame Ruth used to complain about every winter. He looked older, smaller somehow, but peaceful. She used to stand here every morning, he said, gazing out at the field. Said watching the frost melt reminded her that nothing stays frozen forever. She was right, I said. He smiled faintly. You sound more like her every day. That's the idea. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and forgiving. For the first time in years, I didn't dread the silence that followed. It felt earned. When Dad left, I stood alone in the study, tracing my fingers along Ruth's desk. Her old journal lay open. A single unfinished line written in her familiar cursive legacy is the echo of what we choose to repair. I added my own line beneath it, and justice is the voice that never needed to shout. By spring, the house no longer looked like a relic of grief. The roof gleamed new under the sun, the porch painted white. Again, the sign out front, freshly carved, the Ruth Dawson Foundation for those building quietly. It wasn't just a name, it was an apology turned into action. Every Saturday, women from nearby towns came to the property farmers' teachers, single mothers with notebooks full of ideas. We turned Grandma's old barn into a training center, hung string lights under the rafters, and filled it with the hum of new beginnings. On the first day of our workshop, I stood in the doorway watching 20 women sit around the long oak table, the same one where Grandma had once written her will. Their faces were tired but alive, eyes full of that sharp mix of fear and determination that always precedes rebirth. Welcome, I said. This isn't about charity. It's about legacy, yours, mine, ours. Some smiled, some cried, but all stayed. The next week, Mom joined them. She came early wearing plain jeans and her old church sweater, no makeup. If you'll have me, she said, her voice uncertain. We can always use an extra pair of hands, I replied. She ended up teaching budgeting classes, helping women write grant proposals. Sometimes I'd catch her pausing by Grandma's portrait in the hallway, whispering something I couldn't hear. Dad came every few days, fixing fences and repairing lights. The local paper did a follow-up story, the teacher who rewrote her family's legacy. But I didn't read it. I didn't need to. The real story was happening in front of me in laughter that replaced arguments and strangers who found courage where silence used to live. Ryan never called. His company dissolved quietly, his name fading from headlines as fast as it had filled them. Madison tried rebranding online, but the internet doesn't forget. They moved to Arizona, rumor had it. I didn't wish them harm. Some lessons just arrive with their own timing. One morning I found a letter on my porch, the handwriting unmistakable. Dad's careful and slightly tilted. Dear Emily, I've been thinking about what Ruth said that night she scolded me in the hospital. She told me I'd raise children who would have to clean up my cowardice. You did, and you did it without hate. That's what strength looks like. Love, Dad. I pressed the paper to my chest. The guilt that had once felt like chains began to loosen, replaced by something quieter. Something like peace. On the anniversary of Grandma's passing, I hosted a memorial event at the barn. Guests filled every seat. Ben Carter spoke first, recounting Ruth's philosophy that legacy wasn't measured in dollars but in decency multiplied over generations. Then he gestured for me to speak. I stood before the crowd, palms damp, heart steady. My grandmother once told me I began that people reveal who they are when they think you have nothing. She was right. But she also taught me that redemption means giving them another chance to show who they can become. I glanced at Mom in the front row. She smiled through tears. We can't rewrite the past, I continued, but we can stop letting it dictate who deserves belonging. That's why this foundation exists, not to honor Ruth's wealth, but her wisdom. When I finished, the crowd rose in applause, but what I heard most clearly was the echo of her words, "Let justice sing." After the guests left, I stayed behind, standing in the quiet barn sunlight slanting through the windows in long gold lines. I walked to the back wall where Grandma's portrait hung. She looked as she always had, serene, unflinching eyes full of knowing. We did it, Grandma, I whispered. And I didn't shout. I just stood still, long enough for the noise to fall away. Outside, the field stretched wide and bright, the air carrying the smell of fresh soil. Life was growing again, the kind that doesn't ask for permission, the kind that survives winters and still dares to bloom. I locked the door, looked back once, and smiled. Justice had been served, but more importantly, so had grace. And that I realized was the truest inheritance Ruth had ever left me.